Windows 11 was released on October 5, 2021, and it generated so much hype. After all, Microsoft had declared that Windows 10 was going to be the last version of Windows, and it had stayed that way for 6 years. So there was a lot of excitement building up about what great features Windows 11 would bring. It came with a brand new design, improved multitasking, better performance, and also some new controversial changes as well. And now that I've been using Windows 11 for about 3.5 years, I think it's finally time to take a deep dive into how the OS has held up. So, I'll go through each category and share my honest thoughts based on my experience. First, let's talk about the big redesign that Windows 11 brought to many PCs. When I first played around with it, I was in awe at how much better and more beautiful all the elements looked. From the rounded corners, to the more consistent fonts, to the refreshed icons and animations, it felt like a fresh coat of paint over a familiar structure. Even now, 3.5 years later, I think it still looks gorgeous. Microsoft's design team has done a really good job creating a modern and clean interface that fits well with today's hardware and user expectations. Apart from the elements, there were new updates to File Explorer, the taskbar, and the desktop. File Explorer, for example, finally got tabs in late 2022. I think that was an amazing change. I generally have a lot of File Explorer windows open at once, especially when I'm working on multiple projects or moving files around, so for me, these tabs have been very useful to declutter the amount of windows I have at any one time. It's such a small change, but one that had a big impact on how I use the system daily. Additionally, the icons in the taskbar were moved to the center by default, which I got used to pretty quickly. At first, it definitely looked more like a Mac, and I know that turns some people off, but personally, I don't hate the change at all. I actually kind of like it, it brings a bit of symmetry and feels more modern. There's also a new context menu throughout Explorer. And while it still doesn't support third-party add-ons to the default right-click menu, I'm still fine with it. The new menu looks sleek and organized. That said, the one thing I do wish they would improve is the amount of time it takes for the menu to show up. The older version was quick and snappy, and this newer one sometimes feels just a little sluggish in comparison. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something you notice when using it every day. The dark mode consistency and those older Windows applets, like the control panel or legacy dialogues, haven't yet been fully modernized either. It's kind of jarring to switch from a sleek, modern-looking settings app to something that looks like it's straight out of 2010. It's clear that Windows 11 is still carrying over a lot of legacy UI, and while that's understandable, it would be nice to see a more unified experience across the board. But overall, I like the design of Windows 11. It feels like Microsoft's taking a big step forward in their design, even if their job is far from finished. Now, let's talk about Windows 11's performance. This was a bit controversial early on, because while Microsoft boasted 10% performance improvement simply by upgrading from Windows 10, there were some tests online showing that Windows 11 was actually slower on some hardware configurations. I personally have found those online tests to be fairly accurate for my computer, because it was originally designed for Windows 10 and seems to run that OS best. But that doesn't mean Windows 11 performs poorly, far from it. The performance I get on Windows 11 is still excellent. Apps launch quickly, multitasking is smooth, and gaming performance is just as strong as ever. And now, with the introduction of Copilot Plus PCs and Windows on ARM devices becoming more mainstream, the performance story is getting even better. Windows 11 on ARM is more efficient, faster at resuming from sleep, and overall just feels snappy. Of course, app compatibility is still something to keep in mind with ARM, but for the most part, Windows 11 runs really well across both x64 and ARM devices. Let's move on to the little things that they added to Windows 11, those small but meaningful tweaks that enhance the overall experience. For example, the Snap Layout menu that appears when you hover over the Maximize button. This was a genuinely cool and useful feature that I was impressed with at launch, and I do imagine that a lot of hardcore multitaskers find it really helpful. It lets you instantly arrange your open windows into clean layouts without having to manually resize everything. But personally, I don't actually use it too much. Most of the time, I just have two windows next to each other and I snap them using the old keyboard shortcut or drag method. Still, I appreciate that it's there, and it's great for people who like to have multiple apps open in specific arrangements. They also improved virtual desktops, giving each one the ability to have its own wallpaper and better separation, but again, I rarely use virtual desktops myself, so it didn't make a huge difference for me. One change I do use quite a bit is the updated snipping tool. The fact that it now combines screenshotting and screen recording into one app is super convenient. On Windows 10, it always felt messy having both Snip and Sketch and the old snipping tool installed, with different features in each. Now it's much more streamlined. The new Terminal app is another nice addition. It brings a much-needed aesthetic and functional upgrade to both PowerShell and Command Prompt. You can have tabs, themes, and multiple shells all in one window. Speaking of PowerShell, though, Windows 11 still ships with version 5.1 by default, even though PowerShell 7 has been available for years. It's a small thing, but it would be nice to have the most up-to-date tools right out of the box, especially for developers and power users. My opinion still is that the little things Microsoft has added are very useful to some people, and despite me not using some of those features, I still think they're great to have. To be honest, artificial intelligence has been the focus point of every tech company in 2024, and Microsoft has definitely been a big leader in the AI space. They started with a partnership with OpenAI, then launched Bing Chat based on GPT, which was added as Copilot on Microsoft Edge, and eventually it became its own app built right into Windows. And now it's also being integrated across Microsoft's other services, like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Even the Notepad app has AI features built in, although to use most of these tools, you do need a Microsoft 365 subscription. Honestly, I don't use the Windows Copilot app that much. It's basically just a ChatGPT wrapper with some Microsoft extras thrown in. It can definitely be useful for certain users, especially people who are already tied into the Microsoft ecosystem or rely heavily on Office apps. But whenever I need a chatbot, I still find myself going to ChatGPT or Gemini. That said, I do think the way AI is being embedded into the OS is interesting, and I'm sure that over the next couple years, it'll evolve into something more deeply integrated and possibly even more useful than it is now. Now, let's talk about the topic that has been making headlines for a while now, the updates and stability of Windows 11. Most people have had a good experience when it comes to day-to-day stability, especially during the early phases of Windows 11's life. But with the new 24H2 version, there have been a lot more noticeable bugs and instability. I've been running 24H2 myself, and I've had a few issues like screen flickering and occasional UI glitches. Nothing completely system breaking, but definitely annoying when you're trying to get work done. To Microsoft's credit, they are doing a decent job at patching and addressing bugs fairly quickly, even if some of these problems really shouldn't have made it to the public builds in the first place. The update cycle has shifted to a more annual rhythm since around the Windows 10 21H2 era, and while I like the predictability, I hope future feature updates are a bit more polished before being rolled out widely. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, Windows 11 has been decent in terms of reliability. It's not perfect, but it's definitely usable and stable enough for daily use in most cases, and I don't have too much to complain about based on my experience. So, that's pretty much it. That's all I've really wanted to show and talk about with Windows 11, and even though it wasn't much of an update under the hood from Windows 10, my experience with it has been pretty different. Everything from the redesign to the new features to AI have all added up to make Windows 11 a newer, and arguably a better experience when compared to Windows 10. Let's just hope that Microsoft finds their way with design consistency and stability. Alright, that's it for this video. Let me know if you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you in the next video.